Hello and welcome back to
Convo with Lidio and
Hello
Roman.
and welcome back.
On
Hello,
hold,
hello,
on
hello,
hold, hold.
welcome back. Hello and welcome back to
Convo with Lidio and Roman.
Hello,
Lidio
welcome
and
back.
Roman.
Hello,
Lidio and
welcome back.
Roman.
Hello, welcome back. I am just wondering, how many of you have been told that, hey, you've changed, you're no longer the same, you're not the girl I used to know, you're not the wife I married 10 years ago, or maybe your friends tell you, you've changed, we don't even know, you no longer come and hang out with us, and we just don't know what you like anymore, you don't like us or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, and thinking about it, when you hear something like that, or when somebody tells you that you have changed, you're no longer who they used to be, it generally comes with a very painful tone. I mean, they're not telling you that they're proud of you, they're telling you that they're disappointed in you, they're telling you that you're no longer pleasant to be around or to be with, that you don't fit in with them anymore, or they don't fit in with you anymore, or you're no longer in sync or something like that. The tone is generally very not nice, very hurtful most of the time. And I can imagine why one would feel very hurt, because I mean, they're telling you that you they don't get you anymore, and that type of a thing gives you a feeling of being lost, trying to figure out, but what do you mean, why have I changed, what do you mean you don't know me anymore, and all of that, confused. It gives you a feeling of being isolated, because now you feel like you're no longer part of the pack. If it was your husband or your wife, you're no longer feeling like you're part of any family anymore, or even proper family. Like if your parents or your siblings say the same, it's like you feel isolated somehow. That, I mean, why are you getting this feedback? And it's not so nice, right? And very disappointing. But we've been talking about it a whole lot this week. And when I say we, I mean anyone around me. So the funny thing is that these conversations come up in different ways. I could just be talking to somebody about something else, and it actually morphs into that type of a conversation. I don't know how, but that's what happens these days. So as I've been talking to different people and talking about this whole concept of growth and change, it's come to my attention that a lot of people really have heard these words and have been feeling very isolated, and are feeling like they are very hurtful words. But when I think about it, I actually have a different view. I think that if you've heard that word, or those words where they say you've changed and no longer the same, I think actually it's a compliment. I know the tone comes out negative and all, but we should be able to take it as a compliment, because that means you've grown and you've changed. I mean, that's exactly what is expected of a person. I'm not sure why we get confused when people grow and they change. I mean, we're very deliberate when it comes to babies and children. I mean, you have a child there 1 year, and then 10 years later, you don't expect them to be the same. You expect them to have grown physically, mentally, emotionally, everything. You expect them to have grown so much, because 10 years is a long time. But we seem to not appreciate the same amount of growth, or effect of growth on adults, or when people get older. It's kind of like we're expecting them to slow down a little bit or stop growing. Nobody ever stops growing, guys. You are never, even physically, you'll never be the same as who you were or how you looked 10 years ago. So we are physically growing every day. We are emotionally growing. So we are growing. So I'm not sure why we don't appreciate that people grow. And it's good that when people grow, they change. I mean, really, guys, we have birthdays every year, and you are there with your friend or your family or your partner singing happy birthday every year. There is growth that is happening there. It's worse when we sing the other one, oh, hole, hole. I mean, you are technically instructing and wishing and commanding somebody to grow. You must grow and grow and grow and grow. But then when they've grown up and there's changes to them, we get surprised. So, so I thought about why people would say that you've changed, you're no longer the same, and say it in that tone, which is very negative. And obviously, I think as everybody would think about it, the disappointment in them is that they can no longer. Sometimes it's about that they can no longer relate to you or get their way with you the way they used to. So actually, the loss is with the person who's saying the words because now they cannot relate. Maybe they used to talk to you in a certain way and you would just accept it. This time you're not accepting it and they're just afraid what's happened now. Or it's your parents or your siblings who used to do things for them financially, and all of a sudden you start drawing boundaries and now you're no longer the same, you've changed. Or anything like that where a person feels like I no longer have my way with you, I cannot even get what I used to get with you, I cannot benefit what I used to benefit from you, the you that you were. Now I'm stuck, I'm outside, and now I'm confused. What are you? Who are you? Then I say those words to you, and I say them to hurt you because I don't say them to appreciate you. Because if I was saying them to appreciate you, my tone and everything else will be different. To say, wow, you've grown, you've changed, well done. But now this time you're hearing, wow, you've changed. You're no longer the same. You're no longer the person I used to know before. So out of that disappointment that they cannot get their way with you or with things that they used to get, then you get such words. For me, if you are 20 and when you are 30, you cannot be the same person. I mean, when you're 20, you're just out of your teens. And even scientifically or biologically, your logical thinking has not fully developed yet. Only in that decade between your 20s and your 30s is it going to develop. And when it does, at that time in that decade, where you're 24, 25, 26 at that time, you start to think and see life differently. Therefore, by the time you are 30, 31, you would have changed. You would want different things. You want a different life. You've got different ambitions. You no longer like certain things, you like others. You would have changed and it's going to be visible. Similarly, they say life begins at 40, which means turning 30 and turning 40 is not the same. There is a trick or there is something that happens when you turn 40 or when you've turned 40 that doesn't happen when you're 30. So with every age or every time, things change and people change and they grow and therefore they will change. So we need to start embracing the change. My biggest concern is in marriages and partnerships or relationships where it's like love relationships. There seems to not be an expectation that people are going to grow. So what I mean is a person they marry today, or a man marries a woman today, and then 10 years later they expect them to be the same. And what happens even in between, there is no plugging into each other. So the one lives one life, the other one lives another life. You're all in the same house, but you're not talking. You're not trying to learn about each other. You're not trying to find out if there's anything that's changed. It's like you just carry on in parallel. And then you get to 10 years, 12 years later, and you're surprised at each other. So I think that is the biggest mistake we ever do because we don't plug in. We don't figure out what you're doing. I mean, there is no way you can say, even a year is too much, guys. I mean, we saw with COVID 2020, Feb, March, when COVID hit, there was, confusion. By the end of the year, people had changed how they view life, how they prioritize anything, what they appreciate, because they've gone through very dramatic processes, losing people, experiencing near-death themselves. Seeing other people get sick, it was frightening. Yes, I understand that's extreme because it was kind of like a big issue, but it doesn't mean that any person as an individual cannot go through such drastic changes in 1 year. You can just also have losses or gains in your life personally alone that just change how you look at life. And it's going to be difficult if your partner is not plugged into you to understand what is it that is going on with you. Where are you? What are you feeling now? What are you loving now? What are you not appreciating now? So we kind of like leave each other. And actually, another problem is these children that we are raising, because now they are in between, and all we do is talk through children, via children, about children, and it becomes all about that. And we forget to look into each other. There we're going to lose each other. Then I don't really know what you want, where you are, what's changed with you, because things are going to change and you are going to change. So I find that we don't do that, and we don't expect people to grow. We don't expect our partners to grow. So I was speaking to a lady who's also a pastor. So she and her husband are pastors, and part of their service to the church is to assist couples who are going through marriages or some difficult things, etc. And she was saying to me, you know, what they normally see is that guys will come in and say, this woman has changed. I no longer know her. She was never like this before. Whereas women come in and say, this man has never changed. He's been like this ever since I met them. Does he not grow? Can you not change? Does he not understand that we're no longer that age anymore? So I guess there we have it, because they are got stuck like, oh, okay, so yeah, I guess that's how it is. Most women will feel like men are not growing. Is it true, guys? Is it true that men maybe don't grow as fast, or maybe sometimes we don't see the change? I don't know what would be the problem. Whereas women would change quickly and fast, and we can see it. I mean, for women to just have a child, that's already a big change. What they like, what they prioritize, how they come out, what they would do to survive, to let their children survive is another thing. So once you have a girlfriend and you impregnate them and they have a child, just know for sure, now you're dealing with a different person. And all you need to do is to make sure you understand this new person that is in front of you. So I think that's where I am. I know it's a cliche when they say communication is key in every relationship, but seemingly it is. I mean, with many conversations I've done now, everything where there's conflict or misunderstanding or lack of progress is where we are not talking. Either we are talking and not being truthful, or not talking about the right things, or we are just not talking. We're talking about other things. We can gossip about people at church, gossip about our colleagues, come back and talk to the kids, watch movies and talk about movies, but we don't really connect. Another person, okay, so even with friendships, I've realized it's the same. So sometimes you grow up, you are tight friends. When you get to a certain age, then friends start becoming scarce, nyana. And it's because some start to marry, or they get into serious relationships, or they get into certain things. And the other friends will feel like, since you've been married, you're no longer the same. What's wrong? Is your husband being strict on you, and all of that? Not wanting to understand that I have grown, I have changed. And at this stage where I am, we may not understand each other because we're not at the same level. But it takes communication rather than to be hurtful around it, or when you tell people, try to hurt them about that. So that's why I'm here sitting and saying, if ever you've been told that you have changed, you are no longer the same, and you're no longer the person they used to know, or anything like that, well done. You have grown, you've grown very well, you've changed for whoever you want it to be. Whether it's good for you or good for them, or it pleases anyone else, it doesn't really matter. You have moved. You are no longer where you were. You are no longer the person you used to be. You have moved. You're applying yourself differently. You're showing up differently. You are choosing differently, which is great. So I hope you have an answer for the person who'll tell you next time that you've grown, you've changed, you're no longer the same, they cannot fit in. If they say it in a very negative tone, please tell them, No, it's not going to happen like that. Yes, you've changed, and all they can do is to try and understand who you are now or where you are now. You might not even have changed that much, but because the discomfort and maybe the guilt of the other person to of not trying to understand where you are, and now they're trying to reel you back in or discourage you or crush you for your growth, you know. So it's like, no, I've grown. Yes, it's been years, or it's been a couple of years, 2 years, 3 years, doesn't matter. I think your responsibility as my friend or my partner or my mother or my brother or my colleague, your responsibility is to try and understand where I am now. I have a lot of stories that I can tell you. I have ways that I have learned, I have things that I've learned that I want to apply. I want to share them with you so that you can understand where I am, rather than to just crash and leave me saying you're no longer the same. So grow, 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 grow. Change as much as you can. But also when you do that, don't forget the next person next to you, even your own children. Our own children grow in front of us, and we never try and want to understand where they are, who they are, what they're thinking now, and how they're growing. We always get shocked, like, hey man, this person, I thought this and this, they were just right in front of. When did they change? It's because we are not taking into account the little things or the conversations that we are supposed to be having with them to understand where they are, you know. And sometimes maybe we are, but also because children grow so fast and there's so many things that are happening, we might actually miss it or lose it. But as adults, guys, really no, we shouldn't be judging each other or crushing each other for growing. We must grow, and we must appreciate and applaud each other for growing and changing, because we can only get better and better. Happy growing.